What's going on, sir?
Hello again.
How you doing?
I'm well. You?
I'm doing really, really well.
You
Give
don't
me some
remember me, do
insight on
you?
on what your thoughts are.
You don't remember me, do you?
No, am I? What's going on?
We discussed this, I believe, October of last year as well.
Really? All right. So
Yeah.
give me the insight. Bring me up to speed on what your thoughts are. I like
Okay.
that chair, by the way.
Thank you.
Did
Thank
I
you.
compliment you on your chair the last time that we talked?
No, this is new.
Oh, okay. All right.
But yes, you were discussing. You were agreeing that if Joe Biden was going to put that in place, he shouldn't have promised that in the begin with.
That's
But
correct,
since
and
he
I still
finally
stand
did,
on that.
this is water under the bridge, though, and now we're here.
Hmm.
Since he did make that promise, I believe November, or no, it was back in September.
He
Made the
made
claim
the promise during his campaign when he was campaigning to be president of the United States.
after he named Kamala his
Hmm.
running mate. During that time, he also promised full student loan forgiveness for HBCU grads as well as public school
Okay.
graduates. I can drop that link to you for that information as well.
No,
But
just give. I believe you.
yes, that
You
was a
up to date?
campaign promise as well. But my only argument is if we are doing all these bailouts for airlines, tech companies, also as well as for banks, military endeavors in Ukraine and
What do
Afghanistan,
you mean by tech companies?
um, we do also do bailouts for other tech companies that can, if you fail, you could essentially the PPP loan. A lot of people, you may not know this already, but a lot of the tech startups to cover some of their losses did apply for PPP around the time that they did
But that
fail.
was
So
extended to all businesses. It wasn't just extended to tech
I
companies.
know that I kind of pinpointed them because you're more familiar with that sector.
You can't, but you can't separate it in order to make your argument because it was for all businesses. It wasn't for any specific one business or one
Okay,
specific industry.
let's make it all businesses then. So we
Okay.
do have this loan
Uh,
forgiveness for businesses. The pretense for that was that they would pay it back. Am I correct?
no,
So this was a grant, not a loan.
correct. Well, it depended. It depends, right? The idea behind the PPP loan, and I think you already know this, but the idea behind the PPP loan is that majority of those PPP loans were forgiven, depending on if you met certain criteria. And that wasn't industry specific, that was across the board.
Okay, so if they met the criteria, essentially, I guess proving that they're a business,
No, it
that would
wasn't just
be
proving that they're a business, but go ahead.
okay. But with all of these, also, I guess handouts, as you say, because it is taxpayer money that is paying for all this. What is the stigma or the pushback against, people that went to college trying to better themselves and getting a degree at escalated prices that were on exponentially rising rates for tuition fees and room and board while promising or making or kind of putting a stick in there. The kids don't get a 4 year degree, they
Mhm.
kind of fail that life. So why is that onus on the kids saying they made a bad decision on trying to better themselves and then punishing
Because
them?
that's a decision that they can make. See, the difference between what happened with the PPP loans and the argument that you're trying to conflate is that the pandemic was something that nobody had any choice over what was going to happen. The economy was humming, everything was popping. Trump had a booming economy at the time, and unemployment was at a record low. And then a pandemic forced people to have to stay home.
Okay,
That
so
was
let's
not
take.
a no, no, hold on, wait. You asked the question.
Okay,
That was
go ahead.
not a decision that people on an individual basis had in order to determine whether or not they were going to work or not. They were sent home, right? And so companies, in order to keep the economy humming, were incentivized to keep their people on the payroll despite whether or not they were making revenue or not. And then the stipulations later came to determine whether or not it would be forgiven. Now, when you go to college, you have the decision to determine what college you go to, where you're going to go, if you're going to go in state or out of state, if you want to go to community college, so on and so forth. That is a personal decision that you have to make. You have the decision to decide not to go to college. And if you decide to go to college, what degree or what field you want to go into based off of what the criteria is. So if you decide to go and get a social worker degree, a master's degree in social work, and it costs you $325,000, how does that then become a taxpayer requirement in order to ensure that you're successful?
Let's use this argument of personal responsibility then.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying it's a personal choice. So if someone decides to essentially enlist or make a startup or have a business, own a business, or
Mm-hmm.
become a landlord,
Mm-hmm.
um, Do they not also, that's a choice, correct?
That is
And when you
correct.
play the game of capitalism, you have to take the gains with the losses and
Correct.
anything that's unexpected.
But
And
that's
if any,
assuming
when
that
no,
the
no,
playing
I
field.
can have to finish.
Okay, go ahead.
And if it wasn't expected, wouldn't that same kind of argument assuming to students that also take that risk in trying to again make themselves more marketable or manageable in the marketplace? So I'm seeing the parallels there, but I'm not really seeing
Because you
how that
conflating arguments. The PPP loans
is.
wasn't necessarily for the businesses themselves. It was to make sure that the businesses didn't lay off the workers. It was for the
Yeah, lay
workers.
off and go to
Think
lay
about
off
it. No,
and
no, 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 no. Think about it. Don't
okay.
change it. The how much you got was depending on how many people that you employed. That's what the stipulation was. It was for the workers. It was to ensure that there wasn't going to be a mass layoff and then a recession like 2008, which you then would really be crying. That's what it was for. And so it wasn't a risk. It was for specific companies depending on how many workers that they employed to ensure that they kept those people on the payroll so that the
When
entire economy wouldn't collapse due to something that they had no control over. Now, you have control over whether or not you want to control the costs associated with going to college. You have control over that. And again, wait. And
not
again, the
entirely,
problem,
not entirely,
wait.
not
No, you
entirely.
told me to wait till you finish.
That's
You told me to
disingenuous.
wait till you finished.
Okay, we'll be gentlemen.
And the
Go ahead.
problem with your argument then becomes just because A is happening don't entitle you to B. You're not entitled to anything. And you're not entitled to student loan forgiveness either. And if you are, let's assume, and now I'm gonna pose a question back to you, right? How do you determine what's fair and what's not? How do they determine who gets student loan forgiveness and who doesn't? Is it the people that's already paid off their student loans? Do they then get reimbursement? Is it determined by how much money you make? Do you then have to have that threshold by $125,000? How is it fair? How is it not fair across the board for everybody to get that?
I'm not arguing what's fair, what's not. I'm arguing what's.
Yes, you are. You're saying fairness compared to
No, I
PPP
never said
loans
the word
versus
fair.
people
I've
that's
never
going to
used.
school. You are arguing fairness.
Can I finish?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I've never used the word or phrasing for fair. I just stated that again. This is a voter block that Biden wants. Both, I guess, parties do want this block because we are considered the managerial class as opposed to the worker class. They want us to vote for them as well. So if they want us to vote for them as well, again, you have to lay that out for us as you would do for the business owners that do also share that voting or that voting power as well. So again, and essentially what the lobbyists are again bailing themselves out in a way too. So as us as a kind of core constituent group, we kind of messed up on this end by not conglomerating and making a lobby based on student loan forgiveness. That's a fault on us. But if we were to, we would have the same again privileges as again merchants or business owners have as well to get that student loan forgiveness. Now, whether they scale it up or how they want to scale it or they want to means test it half to death, I really don't care. They made the promise. You execute on the promise as I did on signing the promissory note. So we're both in this pool.
You talking about they made the promise as far as to forgive student loans?
Correct.
I'm not arguing whether or not they made the promise or not. I think that, listen, I actually gave Biden credit for delivering on his promise. I don't know if you heard that part.
He didn't deliver on his promise.
No, he did deliver on his promise because the
promises was for public colleges, HBCU grads.
I don't know that. I'm taking your word. I'm taking your word on that. I don't know that for sure. And I know that you hold on, because I just let me clarify, okay? I know that you're going to provide me additional information and we can talk about that. But as of right now, during a live show, I can't go and do that research. So I have to take your word for it, right? But based off of what I know, he did make a promise to address and deal with the student loan crisis. He did forgive a lot of these colleges in which people went to school for, like ITT Tech and stuff like that. A lot of these colleges that apparently did certain things and put certain students in position to where they didn't actually get what was delivered as far as what they were promised from an educational perspective, right? He's forgiven a lot of those student loans. And then he's proposing or announcing this additional $10,000. As far as I know, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders were the ones that said that all student loans should be forgiven across the board, or it should be, I think it was up to like $50,000. So from my perspective, as far as him saying that he was going to get the infrastructure deal done, he was going to do the Build Back Better plan done, and then he was going to address the student loan crisis, he's done all of those things. Now, I completely disagree with the fact that, or the stance that he's taking, because I don't think that student loans should be forgiven. However, from my perspective, he's delivering on his promises. I just don't agree with the policy.
As a personal question, why don't you believe student loans should be forgiven?
What do you mean? Why don't I? Because why should we forgive student loans? Why would I advocate for, okay, first of all, because there's no fair way to cut it. There's no fair way to slice it. Because what happens to the people that come after you that decide that they want to continue to take student loans?
You would have to essentially bail them out too, and we would have free college in the country.
Which you cannot sustain, because who pays for it?
Again, the same way we pay for wars and other
No.
acts.
And you know how we pay for it is we continue to tax and push. We continue to tax and push out the middle class, which essentially are the ones that are going to bear the brunt of everything that's going on in the economy right now.
What is middle class? Can you define that?
Yes, I can. I would say that middle class is probably people that make anywhere from, well, what's defined from the specific government, or from, as far as earnings, is much different than how I define it. I define middle class as probably people that make the equivalent of between $50,000 and maybe $250,000 a year.
That's a big gap.
It's a huge gap. As a matter of fact, I would up it. I would say people that make $83,000 a year to about $300,000 a year. Because you only had a 12% tax rate if you're under $82,000. Okay. You only had a 12% tax rate, but you jumped to 22% once you cross that threshold.
Yeah, I'm well aware of that. That's if you get your AGI to a certain amount and you
correct your adjusted gross income.
Okay, so in doing that, wouldn't you say the majority of those people in there are college graduates?
Well, it depends. Are you on the lower end of the spectrum or no?
Probably.
You said it's a wide spectrum.
It is. Mm-hmm. So within that spectrum, you, I guess, assume that you do have a good number of college graduates. Maybe.
Let me get a couple other people in here too. But go ahead. Go ahead. You were saying what?
I don't have that much time either, but let me just throw that number out there. Maybe about 60%. Wouldn't the student loan forgiveness essentially help boost that class then?
No, you don't want to have student. Well, listen, think about it. No, but think about it. Think about it. It's not even for anybody that makes over $125,000 a year.
I don't agree it should be means tested. Now I can agree on that. It shouldn't be means tested. But essentially, like giving that boom, you do boost that class, as you've already stated that with the.
How do you boost that class?
Because they do not have the debt or the burden for student loans.
So you telling me $10,000 per person is going to move the needle?
No, I said full student loan forgiveness.
That's insane. So you think we should forgive 1.7 trillion and then ongoing continue to forgive student loans and let people go to whatever college they want to go to for free?
We forgave the 30 trillion that we spent in Afghanistan for 15 years.
What does that have to do with what I'm asking you?
I'm putting the argument.
You don't substantiate your argument by looking at what it is that we. First of all, we didn't forgive it. That's what it cost to be there. Now, you may disagree with the fact that we were there or we spent it, but there's no successful country in the world that does not have a robust military. You know that.
Really?
Yes,
I could probably put out Finland. I could probably announce Finland. You also have.
But what is Finland a part of?
Finland is part of the EU.
Exactly. And what's happening in Ukraine right now?
I mean, Ukraine isn't part of the EU.
But my point is that one of the reasons why Ukraine is being invaded is because they don't have a robust. Nobody is ever going to come into the United States.
They don't have a robust military because that is outside of the EU's sphere of influence as well.
Correct. That's my point.
So that's an entirely different argument.
It's not an entirely different argument.
That is an entirely different. That's geopolitical.
Bro, listen, the majority of these smaller countries, one of the reasons why we occupy is because they don't have a strong military and because we have interest to protect in those countries, which means that we then influence what goes on in those countries.
Again, and that's not enough.
And you can't compare the two in order to try to substantiate your argument. You have to substantiate your argument based off of the premise of that argument itself. You can't say, well, we should forgive this because they forgive that over there.
I'm not delineating or anything. I'm following your trail of argument.
No, I said, why should they forgive student loans? And you said, because they forgave student loans. It doesn't actually enable you to be a greater person or a better version of yourself or to actually generate more revenue or anything like that. They're essentially doing the same thing they did during the pandemic, and they're giving you stimmy checks in order to ensure that they get the vote. They're not even giving you forgiveness because they genuinely believe that this is going to move the needle. They trying to buy an election.
I mean, doesn't everybody buy an election?
No.
The corporate class is buying elections. That's what a
So
lobbying
you
group is.
think that
The
and
political
this is
committee
one of the
buying an
reasons why
election.
I actually like Trump, is because one of the things that he did,
Here we go.
this is one of the reasons why I like Trump, is because one of the things that he did is he stood on exactly what he was. He said what he felt, regardless of whether or not the politics actually made sense or not. He told black people, he said, your community's just fucked up anyway. You might as well come and try my way. He actually implemented the tariffs on China. He also renegotiated NAFTA, the North American Free
Now,
Trade
North
Agreement.
Atlantic Free Trade Agreement. Yes, I'm well aware of that. But
Right. So he did the things that actually would make a better situation or give more opportunity or level the playing field with the different countries that we do business with.
where's the wall?
What does that have to do with anything?
You said he did everything, so I just wanted
I
to
didn't
add
say
that.
he did everything. I said this is what I rock with what Trump is because you get exactly what it is that he said. He is what he is. He's not trying to buy an election. He said the truth, and then that's why it started resonating with people.
So when he said he was going to move more jobs to the U.S., but it still facilitated Boeing
So
outsourcing
what do you? But
back
that's
to
a
China,
long
is
term.
that
No, no,
going away?
no.
That's business.
And he did because what
He
you're
shifted
seeing
to
today,
China. Did he
what you're
not?
seeing Biden benefit from today is the policies and the things that Trump implemented. When you see them starting to build these $80 billion plants and these semiconductor chip shortages and everything that's happening, those are the results of the things that Trump put in place prior to Biden taking office. When you see all of these companies trying to move manufacturing back to the US, it's a reason for that. That is the benefit that came along with the policies and the things that he was doing here in the United States of America, including the trade war. All of it was a trickle-down effect. You just see Biden benefiting as a result of it.
We were going to have to move that domestically anyway because of the supply chain issue. So it was going to
Okay,
happen
so if
before
that was the case, then how come no politician said it before he did?
I mean, he's the executive in chief. He was going to be the
How
one.
come no politician said it before he did it? How come
The
nobody
pandemic
actually was
happened in
fighting China and
2020. Who else
implementing this
was
trade
saying it?
war? How come
Because we
nobody?
had a.
You know what the funny part about it is?
I'm telling you the reason. I'm
Wait.
telling
You
you
know what
that.
the funny part about it all is? Is that these same tariffs, even though they're not advertised and talked about by the national media, is still in place today. If y'all were so against it, then how come y'all didn't take back the tariffs that y'all implemented on China?
Okay, we've moved away from student loans and geopolitics.
Well, you wanted to
I
conflate
do want to stay
arguments.
on. I do want to stay on, but I do have a limited amount of time. I have to check
No,
back
don't
in.
have a limited amount of time now for me,
I
big
do. I'm
dog.
sorry. I do. I wish I
Tell me
could
you
stay
coming
on.
back tomorrow then.
I can.
All right, I
I can do
actually
that.
enjoy having conversations with you.
All right, you as well. We'll talk. We'll talk soon.
Okay.
Take care.
All right.